Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eva. Welcome to the second session of online sitting volleyball teaching workshop. The Department of Sports Science and Physical Education, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, is honored to hold the Hong Kong Physical Education Teachers Conference 2021, commissioned by the Education Bureau. This online sitting volleyball teaching workshop is one of the workshops on the teaching of physical activities. One of the Hong Kong Physical Education Teachers Conference 2021 in collaboration with the Jockey Club, Sports Without Limits Youth Empowerment Program. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention to the following disclaimer. The views expressed by our guest speakers in the workshop were their own and should not be taken as the views of the conference and program. The workshop will be photographed and recorded in main room only for advertisement and promotion purpose. There will be no recording in breakout rooms. The rundown of today's workshop is shown on the screen. To facilitate discussion and interaction among us, we encourage our participants to turn on the camera. Now, may I pass the floor to our guest speakers, Dr. Kwok Ng and Mr. John Bestebroer, please.
So thank you very much, everyone. There's a couple of things to do straight away. Is one, to get the slides up on your own device, and you can do this from doing a screen capture from the QR code, or you can use the link that is in the chat box now, and also you can do that. And while we're waiting for everybody else, we have a quick poll for everyone to do at the very beginning. It is a quick question that should appear on your screen. Hopefully it does not get in the way of the QR code. If it does, you can always move the poll somewhere else on the screen. And we're just asking you this so we can arrange the breakout rooms for later on. So please go ahead and to do these two things. In the meantime, we're waiting for everybody to download the PowerPoint Live. Well, not download, but at least connect to the PowerPoint Live. In the meantime, while you're doing both of them, maybe I can just say a few things. Hopefully you've been having a nice week. This is again a reminder that we are using the flipped classroom methodology, in that you learn the things in advance of when we meet, and then in the meeting, we then discuss what you have learnt to increase the learning that you have from this training. It is not like the traditional approach where we teach you the content in the lecture, but more a case that you do the teaching yourself first of all, and then you bring up the questions that you are unsure about, and you ask us as the experts for further clarification. And having looked at most of the information, it seems that we've had some really nice questions from people. So I'm going to stop the poll in 10 more seconds. So if you've not completed it yet, we have most people are replying to this. We just should be getting 5 more people. So if you've not completed the poll, if you want to do this in the next 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end that. Okay, so I'm not going to share the results, but I am going to keep this for our purpose to design out the breakout rooms. And then also, hopefully now everybody has got the link. If you haven't got the QR code, then there's always the link that you can get from the chat box. Okay, so let's go forwards. The disclaimer, the first thing that we've been asked is to give you some answers on the quizzes. So at the end of last week, there was a quick poll for you all to complete, and there was this type of question here. There was 5 quick questions, and we will provide the answers here. So which one of the rules is different between sitting and standing volleyball? And there were these options. Teams have 3 touches to return the ball. Other than the server, the entire body must be inside the court at the time of the serve. The libero is not allowed to play an attack shot, and there are 3 front and 3 back court players. So which of the rules is different between sitting and standing volleyball? And the correct answer is, other than the server, the entire body must be inside the court at the time of the serve. So this is different for standing volleyball because it's determined by your buttocks, so rather than your feet in standing volleyball. Next question was, when playing sitting volleyball, what directions of movement is fastest for most players? So we had this question in the poll last week, and some people said that the kangaroo hops would be the fastest. Actually, most people said that. That's not necessarily what we find is the correct answer. What we find most of the time, and when you have practice with this, the correct answer would be backwards. That would be the fastest way to move. And because of this is a different way of thinking with regards to your movement. We think naturally of moving forwards to something. We run faster running forwards than running backwards. So when we attack the ball, when we meet the ball, it's quicker for us to go forwards. Whereas now, the movement is different. The movement is going backwards. So thinking-wise, you have to think of, it's easier for me to be closer to the ball so I can move backwards than it is for me to be further away from the ball to move forwards. So that's quite a big difference between the sports.
Can I say something about that, Kwok?
Yes, please do, John.
Yeah. You should think about standing in a train. The train is moving 100 kilometers an hour. If I should ask how fast you are, then people are saying I'm standing still. That's the same with moving backwards when the ball is coming. If you are going to the ball forwards, then you have a clash, let's say. But if you're moving backwards and the ball is also following, then it's also easier to play the ball because the speed is a little bit out of the ball, just as a reminder.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Which of the following definitions is lifting? So this was also asked from some people this week as well. And what is the definition of this lifting? And so the correct definition of this is when losing contact with the floor and playing the ball. So you should be playing the ball and you lose contact of the floor between your buttocks and your shoulder. Okay, so somewhere between your buttocks and your shoulder, if that's no longer touching the floor and you're playing the ball, then that's considered lifting in most circumstances. There are some exceptions, but that's quite a technical issue. Next question, which block is extra and allowed in sitting volleyball compared with standing volleyball? Is that a kill block, the zone block, the service block, and the break block? And the answer to that is the service block. So in the 1970s, volleyball changed the rules where you can no longer block the serve. Whereas in sitting volleyball, the rules stayed the same because basically the server is closer to you in sitting volleyball than in standing volleyball. So therefore, the service block can be used as a defense against the serve, okay, on a very basic level. And this feature doesn't happen in standing volleyball anymore. And the last question, where is the best position of the hands for a defender when the ball is not on your side of the court? So when the ball is on the opposite side of the court, you're on one side of the net, opposite side, then where should you put your hands? Where should the players put their hands? Should it be on the floor? Should it be in front of their body? Should it be at chest level or should it be at head level? So where would be the best place to put it? And the correct answer to this is hands on the floor, because the reason for this, John, would you like to explain the reason for the best position would be on the floor?
Well, the reason is especially the movements. That's the basic for it. So if you have your hands already in the air, no matter where, and the ball is moving a little bit left or right of you, then the first thing you must do is putting your hands on the floor to move. And during a game or during a rally, then mostly you will be a little bit too late. So waiting with your hands on the floor is easy, especially if the ball is coming to you, then you can of course play the ball, but if you have to move, then you're already in the best position to move. That's it.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, right then. So I'd like to, before we talk about some questions that you prepared for us, I wonder if anybody has any questions right now that you may have for us on the floor. If you want to unmute yourself, or at least put your hand up on the Zoom icon, and then we can nominate who wants to speak. I'm going to give you a quick 10 seconds to put your hand to ask a question. Otherwise, we will answer some of the questions. And here are some of the topics that we have here. So I don't see any hands up. So I'd like to come up with maybe the first thing and invite John to talk a little bit about the fun factor. So some of the questions we had were based on some of the issues that can be dealt with a fun factor. So John, would you like to describe this fun factor, please?
Yeah, especially with young people, the fun factor is very important with sitting volleyball. Sitting volleyball is a technical sport. So if they start thinking too much about how to play the ball, how to put a hand, stuff like that, that will be very hard. But if you bring in the fun factor, like counting or a little bit quicker or stuff like that, then suddenly players and in general children are more focused on the fun factor, and in the meantime they're working also with their skills but not thinking about the skills in the priority. Let's say if I start training a national team, then I'm not interested in the fun factor. I want to win, I want to make them better, and that's the goal, that's the reason why they are there. But especially with students from schools, it is important that you start with the fun factor. And if you have a basic exercise, step by step, you make it a little bit difficult or harder for them. So you can find out where the moment is that they change from fun to getting serious. Or maybe they are not interested in serious at all and they don't want to be better, they just want to play with the ball. That's also important, but at least it should be starting from the fun factor.
Okay, lovely. So hopefully that helps you to answer some of your questions that you had. There was another question about whether there's differences between boys and girls. My answer to that would be that there are hardly any differences to the game other than the net height when you play a competition. And that's at the highest level competition. When we're talking at for school level, I don't think the net needs to be any difference between them, and you can play with boys and girls together, because the way that they play, the amount of the reason why we would separate boys and girls is to do with muscular strength, supposedly. Okay, and basically for school level sitting volleyball, the muscular strength difference is not as strongly different as you would need to have segregated boys and girls. So I would say that you could have both boys and girls playing together. If you wanted to have, and you have enough kids to have boys and girls separate teams, then okay, you can have it like that. But then you might want to ask yourself, when you think about competitions, why you would separate them for that reason, because you have a net that separates people anyway. You might even have the boys team play against the girls team just to be sure that you can actually mix the boys and girls together. Another question was about skill differences between sitting volleyball and standing volleyball. So John, do you have any particular tips about the differences between the sitting and standing techniques?
Well, in general, the volleyball and sitting volleyball skills are more or less the same, the setting, service, attack, stuff like that. But what you will find out, because of the smaller court and because of the movements for sitting volleyball are a little bit harder, it goes faster and the ball is quicker at your place. The basic in there should also be that more or less there are no difference, but you have to improve them. And especially what I find out with experience, I also find out that when you start and just do it, that's the best way to learn. So the really difference are especially the small court and stuff like that.
Okay, lovely. And so one other thing is about the step principles. So everybody who's done the teaching plan, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for doing that. It was very interesting to see some of these plans. Some of them were very nicely covered with the step principles, and some of them were very good for teaching, practicing. So the step principles were covered in the materials, and you'll be using that as part of your guidance, as well as it was covered earlier by Ken Black in an earlier presentation from the Jockey Club. So, so a lot of the answers can be defined from this step principle when you look at your teaching practice. So I'd like to put another poll now. Now this poll question doesn't really have a right or wrong answer. It really depends on your context. So it's in your opinion. If you wanted to teach a block of sitting volleyball, so when I mean a block of sitting volleyball, if you're based on your curriculum, you were going to focus on the sport for a few weeks or for a few lessons of sitting volleyball. If you were to teach that, which technique would you teach first to your students? As I say, there's no right or wrong answer, but in your context, what would you say would be the most, which would be the first technique that you would teach to your students? So we're getting a few responses in already, almost halfway there. So just have a think about this and think about which technique you would teach first to your students. Is it blocking? Is it defense? Is it digging? Is it movement? Is it service? Or is it setting? Okay, so just give you 10 more seconds to this. We're getting the last few entries coming through. Okay, and so I'm going to end the poll very shortly now. Okay, and I can share you the results. Okay, so the majority of you, 70%, said that you'll teach movement first, and 15% said that you'll cover defense first, and about 6% said that you'll do setting first. John, do you have any comments about this? What do you think?
I think movements are, in general, very important for sitting volleyball, because if you have the best setting or the best digging or the best block, if you're not on the right spot, then the action you want to do is useless in the positive way. So being on the right spot is always the priority. And of course, step-by-step learning, in this case, how to block, where to block, work with others for the blocking is important. But I prefer, and that's always what I introduce with my national teams as well, the movements are very important in sitting volleyball, more important than in volleyball.
Right, so very, very good. Hopefully that's a good tip for you to consider. But as we mentioned, there's really no right or wrong answer, because it depends very much on how you're teaching things. But movement is very important. Okay, so we're going to go into breakout rooms for the next 20 minutes. And this is based on your feedback of wanting some ideas of how to teach certain skills. Now, some of you may have some good knowledge in volleyball, some of you may not, but I would like you to start thinking about the process of a skill. What is the progression in the skill acquisition? So, you know, if we look at it from a pedagogical perspective, we're looking at breaking down the skill into micro units of the process of before the skill happens, during the skill, and afterwards. And what are those actions between all of that? So I'd like you to think about choosing one skill and discussing how would you sequence that skill acquisition. Okay, and when you've covered that and you all have agreement with that, then maybe we can discuss, you would discuss another skill. So there is the attack, there is the block, there is the dig, there's the serve, and there's the set. These are skills in relation to the ball. And how would you do this as a progression with this? So we're going to go into your breakout rooms now, and they're going to be done at random. Please turn on your cameras if you can, and yeah, we'll see you in 20 minutes. Okay, do we have everybody back in the main room now? I think so. Yes, wonderful. Okay, I heard some people were still talking, so that's really good to hear. It's a pity we don't ever have enough time, but it's always a good thing because it means that we can continue on with this. And for this, I'd like to open up the floor. Perhaps one of the teams, one of the rooms, someone from there would like to talk and share what you had discussed in your room, and we can maybe continue on with this. So does anybody want to volunteer? If not, I will ask someone from one room. Just want to, what's it called? Nominate yourself, put your hand up. If you cannot, then I'm gonna ask someone from room 5. And I don't remember your name, apologies. But there was someone who
raised her hands up. Miss
okay. Yes.
Yes,
please do.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I speak in Cantonese.
Okay, John, apologies.
Okay, so 我哋嗰組咧討論完咧就會講教發球先嘅，因為我哋嗰組有啲同工咧就係一個中度智障或者智障學校嘅學生啦。咁排球呢個運動對佢嚟講咧，相對都係難掌握嘅。咁但係發球係由於係即係你喺指定嘅場區發球過指定場區，越過個網咧，咁就已經係成功啦。咁所以相對佢哋就會易掌握啲啦。咁我哋可以由初步教佢就係要發球過網啦，可以教下手先啦，然後就再教上手啦。由第一個目標係過網，跟住然後咧就再去對面場區任何即係可能場區入邊去個波落，跟住然後再縮細個範圍，就去到一個指定嘅發球嘅地嘅希望去發球嘅區域發球去唔同嘅位置啦，1、2、3、4、5、6號位啦。咁最初過網你想去提供佢嘅成功感啦，咁我哋可以近網啲先嘅。去到最後先拉到去最遠去發球去個底線去發球過對面場區咯。我哋嗰組大致係咁討論，即係覺得發球會係最易嘅。係啦，唔該晒。
Okay, Eva, would you like to do a quick translation so for the benefit of John to hear? Very good point.
I was trying to.
So what's about the serving, right?
Yes.
You know the Cantonese well, yeah.
So I get some background information from Eva already. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so that's actually a good thing with regards to the serve. Did anybody have any comments about that from any other teacher?
Yeah, Kenny.
Yes, hi Kenny.
Yeah, for our group, we are also talking about surfing, and the progression. We will have some more in the previous stage. For the first stage, we will use the ball sense, just like throw and then catch, throw and then catch. After that, we'll throw and then touch the ball, throw and touch the ball. And then the third stage, and then throw the ball in the air and then punch the ball. That is the hand-eye coordination. And after they can achieve it, and then we can jump into the stage the phone carrying talk about. That's it.
John, yes?
I just want to say that it's good that I see some step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in an exercise, which is good. And I just want to support this, that even on a national team level, I use this as tapping. My national team players know exactly how to set, but in some exercise, I ask them not to bring the ball directly, but do a tip for themselves and then play the ball back. It gives more time, and it gives also better control about the ball. And especially with people who start with sitting volleyball, that will be very important. So the more ball touches they have, the sooner they understand what they are doing. So I love to hear that step by step. That's very good.
Yeah. Okay. We could spend hours on this discussion. In fact, there are extended coach courses that talk about the techniques, and of course we are limited by time. One of the things that I would just say about the serve is that we've been talking about the overarm serve, and of course you can start playing the serve underarm serve as well. And that underarm serve is a way to also begin the game. This is what was mentioned, and some of the difficulties to start playing is to play the game. Also, for next week, we would talk in the materials, you'll find out about different materials. So I've got here, this is like a pillow ball. Okay, so you can hold it for people with very acute sensitivity. You can cuddle the ball. You can then also play the ball as well. I actually got this from the Hong Kong Volleyball Association, that you can see. So this is their website. If you want to look at some equipment to get, that's also one thing to have a little bit of promotion for Hong Kong Volleyball Association. But yeah, it's, you know, it's a jump towel, but it can also be used as a ball as well. We should move forward to the next poll, and in this case, we'd like to ask the same question but different circumstance. Which would be the last to teach your students? So the previous question we asked, what would be the first that you teach your students? Now, if you're thinking about you're planning for your whole teaching block, which skill would be the last one that you have? And so there is blocking, defense, digging, movement, service, and setting. Now, remember, most people said that the first skill would be movement, the first one, but then now this question is what would be the last? Which one do you think would be the last skill? In the meantime, I might just cuddle my pillow a little bit more. It's very nice. Okay, so most of us have responded. I'll just give you 10 more seconds just to choose between which would be your last technique. And then I will close off the poll in 2, 1, and I'm going to end the poll now. And this is quite interesting. I'm going to share the results. We have a mixed bag, as they call it. We have most people, like a quarter of you said blocking, a quarter of you, and then 1 in 5 said digging and defense. These were quite similar to each other. Service and setting, also a few people there. So there's probably the one that's most agreeable is movement would not be the last one, but also it makes sense to have that covered as well for some people. There's no wrong or right answers, but John, would you like to consider this in terms of when you're designing the whole curriculum of sitting volleyball as a technique to bring in the last one?
If you look at the steps, you start with a serve, then there is the digging from the ball, then there is the setting by the setter, and then there will be an attack / a block. So that's the way the ball should go. The good thing with the serve, if I start with that is the only action you take time as a player, because you have time to, after the whistle, you don't have to go direct in action. Well, the other actions like digging and setting and attacking, then you have to act because the ball is on the way already. So that means that there will be a higher focus moment to the ball and to the techniques and stuff like that. But it depends a little bit about the player's quality. If I see that my players are very good in setting, then yeah, I will do some other exercise where they are not very good in, because setting, they have that already, they know that already very well. So it's also a little bit challenging where to find. And in that case, it's also important, coming in overall in the question, what is important, what will you start with, or what will be the last? The focus is always that, will you make a player better with something he do already very good? So from an 8, you want to be him a 9, or do you want to have the same player who has a 4 with digging, make a 5 or a 6? That depends also a little bit about the player self. But that's the basics.
Okay, thank you for your suggestions, John, on that. Okay, let's move forwards to the next breakout. So we're going to only put this for 15 minutes because we're a little bit over time. So now we're going to go back to your the drills that you had created. You put in, you had been thinking about. So if you have this to hand, it may be useful to share the screen with your group, just to show what your drill was going to be, and particularly you're thinking about what you're going to do for your video, and then perhaps present it to the other people in the group and get a few minutes feedback of how you might be able to improve it, or provide more information and clarity of what you're going to do. So hopefully you should be back in the same groups, and hopefully you're going to discuss your drills that you've shared, and you just choose one of them, the one that you're going to do the video for, so you can get some feedback before you make the video. Okay. Right, so we're going to spend 15 minutes on that, and look forward to hearing more about these drills and exercises. Okay, it should be, everybody should now be joining back in. Apologies if you were talking mid-sentence and then you got cut off, but this is the thing that we have with breakout rooms, and it's really good to know that this happens, that you're still in the middle of conversation. We'd like to address one question first, and this was based in room number 1 about the kids with who might be on a spectrum, like the autism spectrum, or they might have mild to moderate intellectual disabilities, and the need to move and constant need to move, and how do we keep them, the question was how to keep them motivated. I think there's a few issues about this. It's not just about motivation, but we'll cover motivate first of all. So John, would you like to just first we'll talk about this question first, and then I can perhaps give my experience and suggestions too.
Well, to find a motivation from students is always very important, of course, to have also some positive results. The basics should be that, and coming back to what I said earlier on, is the fun factor. The more students like it, the more they are motivated to stay longer and to get involved with it. The other thing what will be important in that case is that what you are doing should be very simple and very easy to follow. If it's too hard for them, then yeah, they disappear because yeah, they don't know what to do, or it's too hard for them. So the motivation go down. And what helps is, of course, the use of some materials. We spoke last week, for example, about balloons or the beach ball. That is a fun factor which can help students to stay longer and to want to be a part of the exercise. That's, I believe, the important things to start with, and to get them back on the floor again to do some exercise.
Okay, lovely. I'll answer very quickly because there's some other people that would like to discuss further. So basically, with regards to this type of group of kids, I think you have to be quite creative. You would know your pupils best, and you would know what their types of preferences and their habits are going to be. As long as you get them involved in the whole situation, I've never experienced problems as long as they feel engaged and part of it. And again, this is one of the reasons why I have actually got some balls which are they're like balloons inside, and then they have a soft material outside, and they have an attachment to the ball during that time when you are given instructions, so they can feel comfortable and at ease with a ball. And it's because of that you can then get them to do the activities and exercises. And we make the exercises where they have much more cooperation. So you would have seen the types of competitions. There's the competitive, there's the play to play, and there's also cooperative. So play games that are cooperative and include exercises where they have to work together as well as feel part of things. Okay, so that would be my main tip with regards to that. In addition to this motivation, is also the way you orchestrate and arrange your environment and your room and your setting for them to feel comfortable to play the sport. So hopefully you've got a couple of good tips there. What's up from John and one from myself. There is Ms. Mann, So Wei Man. Would you like to unmute yourself and share what you had wanted to talk about?
係，大家好。咁咧，我就想同大家咧就分享一下咧，我係響教呢一個嘅sitting volleyball 嗰個嘅點樣由一個 movement 去到打呢個波，甚至乎可以去到玩到一場波嘅。咁喺裏邊咧，我有幾個 step 啦，想同大家分享嘅。咁首先咧就係move to different directions with the markers following the signals。For example, sound cue 啦、hand cue 啦、visual cue 啦，or doing the opposite with the cue。咁呢一個係俾一啲即係智商比較高啲嘅同學啦嚇，咁即係挑戰下佢哋嘅難度嘅。咁第二點咧就 use the different balls from slow to fast with different position， sitting or standing。咁咧主要係俾佢哋去感覺下唔同球速嘅波，由慢到快嘅。咁喺當中一路係挑戰下佢哋有一個嘅趣味啦嚇。咁同時間就係配合佢哋試下又坐喺度嘅感覺，同埋企喺度嘅感覺係點樣。咁另外咧就俾佢哋有一啲嘅即係課分咁樣啦，就係 blanket ball 啦。blanket ball 咧就係用塊布嚟到去即係拋起嗰啲波，幾個人揸住塊布一齊將個波控起嚟，等佢哋有一個 feeling 咧，就係點樣係有一啲嘅個波嗰個移動啊 movement 啊係點樣啊？咁甚至乎可以 develop 到咧係兩組人一齊玩呢個 blanket ball 嘅，就係由一邊去拋到另一邊，咁去拋嚟拋去，等佢哋咧係容易過用個手接咯，因為係有一塊布咁去承接住佢啦。咁第四個step 咧就玩 keep up， 咁就係由一個波去到發展到 to more balls，from one ball to more balls。咁咧就係用嗰啲 balloon 啦，咁就係一路加落去，由一個、兩個、三個、四個、五個，咁一 group 人圍住一個圈，一個 circle 咁樣去玩嘅一個咁幾有 team spirit 嘅。咁第五步咧就係開始玩一啲嘅 volleyball 啦，真係有個 setting 俾佢哋試下啦。咁前排就係俾一啲 sitting player 啦，後排就係俾一啲 standing 嘅 player。咁咧可以use different kind of net 嘅，例如咧係一條繩啦，一張長凳啦，或者係一啲 table tennis 嗰個嘅 stand 啦，甚至乎一啲 whiteboard lower 嘅 whiteboard 啦，咁嚟到去俾佢哋感覺唔同嘅 net 嘅高度啦嚇，咁但係咧就俾佢哋試下呢一個感覺，最後就用一個真嘅 net 去volleyball 嘅 net 去玩啦。 咁而球例裏邊咧，亦都去俾佢哋放寬下佢哋啦 ，3D 嘅個 rules 係allow the ball bounce once 啦，或者係 tries 啦。咁跟住咧就係俾佢哋用唔同嘅 body 去接個波啦嚇，可能有啲人咧係 catch 個波啊，有啲可以係擊個波啊嚇，視乎佢哋嘅能力。總言之咧就係for fun 嘅，即係喺呢個 game 嗰度咧係feel fun，feel enjoyment 嘅。咁呢個就係我希望喺呢一個即係練習裏邊帶俾學生嘅一啲練習、一啲 practice 同埋一啲嘅趣味啦嚇 ，interest 啦嚇。咁呢個係我嘅分享。That's all for my sharing.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you found some of the discussion helpful for this. I think it's quite an ambitious lesson plan, but so one thing that would be useful to know is how long this lesson plan would last for. Do you have a quick answer to that? Is it one class, or is it 10 minutes, or 5 classes? How much time do you expect this type of plan to take place?
I think up to the ability. If they are high ability, I can use less time. If they are not, I think spend more and more time. Up to my students. Okay. So this is one thing to consider as well. So are you thinking you will do a video for these 5 progressions? Okay, we look forward to seeing it. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I'm speaking for John as well. That would be really nice for you to do that. Okay, could I ask you to stop sharing your screen now, please? And then I will share my screen. So thank you very much for that. It would be really nice to discuss that further. But we should have to move forwards and move onwards. So a quick question for you to think about in terms of what happens if the ball is caught and stopped between 2 opposing players blocking at the net. So they don't have to be blocking, they can be just playing the ball. They can be both attacking the ball. And what should the referee or teacher do? Okay, should they wait until the ball drops to one side? Should they stop the play and play a new point? Should they stop the play and give the point to the team where the ball came from? Should they stop the play to give the point to the team where the ball is not from? So it goes to. So what would you do if you were a teacher or a referee of this game? How would you manage this situation? So this is one very unique feature in sitting volleyball that we do not have in any of the volleyball, standing or beach. So I'll give you a little bit more time because it's not something we've talked about, but something that I'd like you to get your opinion of, and then we can tell you what actually happens. So when we say the ball is caught, so there's 2 players, like if there's the net in the middle and you have a player on one side, and you have a player on the other side, and then the ball is in the middle, and then both players are trying to play at the same time, but they have stopped. Okay, what would then happen? Okay, we have most responses in. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to press stop, and I'm going to share the answer, and I'm going to ask John. He's completely unprepared for this, but would you like to comment on how you see the answers?
Yeah, well, I know the answer, so that's that's good. The answer is stop the play and play a new point, and that's what we call a double point, a double fault. Let's say that referee is doing this. That means that we have to play over the rally again. And what you see, as you said already, Kwok, with volleyball and with beach volleyball, they are jumping in the air and they have a situation that both sides are pushing. But for sure, they're coming down. So it's not always a very long moment. While in sitting volleyball, they are sitting, and it can take, in the worst case, minutes if something is not changing at all. So that's also one of the reasons you see it more in sitting volleyball than in volleyball or beach volleyball. But the best answer is stop the play and play a new pot.
Yeah. So the first answer, if you wait until the ball drops to one side, what happens is that you might be waiting a very long time, because two people are sitting on the ground and they're holding the ball. And it may be for a very long time because they are putting their weight on the ball, both of them. And you can try it with your colleague as you're sitting. How long can you sit on your chair and do a high five? You can do the high five for all day if you want to, okay? So, or put a tennis ball between it and it would stay there. So that's why you should stop the play and then start a new point. It's not really fair where it comes from or where it goes to, which is why that's also not necessarily the correct answer. Okay, so we have some quick assessment questions for you to do. There is this Google form. If you could take a screenshot with a QR code, or if you would want to use the Google form to answer these questions. And there is one comment about the video project for 5 minutes because of COVID-19. Yes, it is challenging. I hope you can find a solution. Does anyone from CUHK have some advice for them? Because I believe there was a similar situation with Ken's sessions. Is it common situation for it's called a joust? So if you remember in a medieval times, the Black Knight or the knight on the horse would have this long spear, and they would be marching it down, and they would meet the other person, and the two horses with the person, and they would meet, and then they would hit, and that's called the joust. And this is the same thing with a sitting volleyball, a joust, or even volleyball, it's called a joust because they're both coming together for the same thing. Okay, it's more common in sitting volleyball. It happens maybe 3 or 4 times. It depends, per set. It depends on the competition. It depends on the level, but it can be quite frequent, or it may never happen in a game, depending on how close they play the ball. But it does happen on a regular basis. So yes, was there any advice from CUHK about this videoing?
Yeah. From my understanding, the video mainly explain how to do your lesson plan. So how to teach the skills you want to teach for your student, may have the disability or may not. So I think it's not necessary to involve any student in the video. If I'm wrong, please correct me. So I think it's okay if you can just, during the video, you just explain how can you teach those skills in the progression and how you can use different equipment or how you manage the time and different disability. I think that's good enough. It's not necessary to involve any student in the video. So see if Kwok and John agree, or what's your opinion?
Okay. So obviously this is something we haven't really put too much thought about. We know there's the COVID. Of course, if you can get students there, that would be wonderful to see, and you yourself get the practice. But if you have those limitations, then as Eva says, this would be a good substitute. But please, think about it yourself, what you get from this course. This may be your main opportunity to try this. We see many of the feedback with regards to the low levels of confidence is because there's no practice. And this is one of the unfortunate things. Both John and myself would really want to be in Hong Kong now and to teach you this in a gymnasium where you have practice, but unfortunately, the situation is what it is at the moment. So, you know, I hope you can maybe be able to make advantage of this course to allow you to practice it in your own environment. And maybe this is even better than in the gymnasium, because you get to see what is it like working with the children in a situation with sitting volleyball, even for a few minutes. But of course, safety first, and we're not going to make you do things that go against the protocols that you've been told to do. Was that correct, John, as well? Are you happy with that? And Doris has her hand up, but John.
I agree with that. And maybe it's good to know that winners find solutions and losers find excuses. That's a line I always use in my national teams. And now it is important that we find a solution. So we have to be creative in this kind of things. So maybe we can ask family to sit on the floor, and we don't want a perfect team, but at least seeing new guys in action will help us a lot to get an idea about our students as well.
Okay, and Doris?
Yes, and from our past experience, we saw a lot of videos with partner teachers. So meaning that instead of inviting students to involve, perhaps teachers could invite another teacher to do the video together.
Yeah,
Let's see
if
Kwok and John would agree with that. Thank you.
That's an excellent idea. So, okay, I will stop the sharing. Hopefully you all have, oh no, I have not stopped the sharing. I've got one more thing to show. So, so for the very last week, we have the materials. They are already online. They are about the small-sided games. There's only one PowerPoint which covers these three areas, and then we will talk about it in more detail in our meeting. In the meantime, there's less preparation work for you this time round, because you only need to focus on one drill to prepare your video lesson. That's what you're going to do, but you're going to answer some of these questions there as well. Okay, so less work maybe is going to be about 20 minutes, and then there's a 15-minute survey afterwards. So maybe book a maximum of 1 hour of time to do this activities, plus the reading time that you have on here. And yeah, and so if you can do that as soon as possible, before the session next week. Okay, I think that's the last one. Yes, so I can stop sharing.